Hey everybody, welcome back to Your Free TV. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026, and I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel. I start by saying thank you. Thank you so much to Christy and Joette. Thank you so much for supporting. So appreciated, and everybody supporting monthly. Thank you. I'll jump in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. And I'm so glad to be back with you here today. Of course, right now, well, I'll just jump in, right? I'll just jump in. I'll plug at the end of the channel, end of the video. But basically, this video, you'll see by the thumbnail, we're talking about the new threats here arising out of NATO to, set off the Magog, right? As Israel's trying to take over our military and merge with everything. The DARPA, IARPA, everything to totally control the USA. And yeah, we're going to jump into all of it because this new threat out of Belarus and how it's being put out by the Harvard, the Belfer, strangely sounds like Belfour, but the Belfour school there in Harvard and Kiev Independent, setting the stage, plus from the Russian side saying they're going to do an FF and try to, do a war setup here. So we're going to get into that in a moment. I will just say a few things first. We just have, of course, the California primary just closing, last votes in. So, of course, this is, will Platt, be running against Mayor Bass there in LA, and of course the governor race, because we have Tom Steyer, who has always been the green carbon capture guy who ran for president against Trump, and Becerra, total stooge of the World Economic Forum, really Obama stooge, that basically has everything from the NIH and all of this under his belt. Both of those things mean doom for Californians versus, of course, Steve Hilton. So we're really hoping for Hilton to win this. And with, is it Platt? I believe it's Platt. I've been following it. We know he's not claiming a political stance there as a Republican or not. He's been kind of like, the Palisades, I don't know. It's probably not really going to be built back. So it's all interesting what's going on there. But we're going to get with you tomorrow about the California primary, because California is such an incredible state, and we need to unite across the country with all the people who are liberty and America first minded to how we can save this republic. So we'll be getting into what happened in the California primary tomorrow, unless something announces as I'm doing this video. But let's jump in with the rest of the news, because it is kind of another intense day, right? Last night we had, of course, President Trump goes off on Netanyahu, about the assaults into Lebanon, and he or somebody in the administration leaks it to Axios, their chosen channel, their chosen media source, to put it out there. And is it real? Is it media PR? While we're dealing with this NDAA massive threat of Israel, uniting treasonously with our military, and an absolute 100% invasion takeover of our country, 100% anti-constitutional, doy, and 100% illegal. Okay, cannot happen, must not happen. And kind of obviously total crickets in the mainstream media, but even on the alternative, whatever, larger platforms, crickets as well. Not a lot of talk about this. So on the other side of it, on the other side of, if you look at Ukraine and, kind of Israel north, we get this whole situation of what is now being put forth as, can we kick off World War III with Russia? Right. And so I'm going to jump into that very soon, but I wanted to talk about a few things and action. Right. So And I'll be talking more about it tomorrow. It's the House Armed Services Committee that is where the action is needed, right? With our representatives, it is going hard against those members, and I'll be talking about that in the next video. We need to go hard against them for this Israel thing, and of course, in the Senate with Lindsey Graham, we need to primary him out as being, of course, central in this whole debacle that has come forth, totally criminal. And so, this dedicated appointee in the Pentagon, everything. It's everything. It's directed energy weapons, missile tech, AI, quantum. Energy gets into cold fusion, all of it. And so, and probably the most disturbing, but is there most disturbing in this is the full data fusion, where Israel's Mossad, IDF, their military, their intelligence has full data access to everything of us Americans. And no is the answer, giant no. So we'll be talking about that more soon. But I wanted to also mention that we have, of course, Melissa Cassius, one of the missing nuclear scientists, okay, who disappeared in the New Mexico desert after leaving her cell phone and other things behind in her mailbox, thinking she's being rendered for something else, goes on this supposed hike in the wilderness. Her body is found, was now found. Okay, she's been missing since last June. This is one of over 20 now of these nuclear scientists. She was out of Los Alamos labs, and I believe working on zero-point energy, working on very, high-level new energy. That is not new. It's 30 years old, but that is now being developed for R&D and deployment. And now her body has been found. And in the New Mexico forest, apparently a handgun found nearby. She had been very vocal, putting up posts saying, I am not suicidal, I will not kill myself, I'm under attack, directed energy weapons, Havana syndrome, the whole thing. And now Melissa Cassius's body is found. I'm sure that this Friday we'll be seeing Dark Journalist on YouTube, covering what he can expose about any extra tidbits we can glean about her murder, but now her body is found, and the body count keeps climbing. So I wanted to mention that. And so we had, of course, Rubio testifying before Congress on the Iran situation, and kind of handling it like a boss. Attacks all sides. And Rubio's just a very good speaker. I mean, he's an intelligent person, and he was very, very able to handle what was thrown at him, but still no more answers, right? But we do have answers about the larger picture, which is, of course, the Iran operation is to take down the banking establishment funding worldwide terrorism and energy control out of the city of London, keeping the United States hobbled in energy and controlling the buying and selling, the insuring of the waterways, the vehicles, the ships, etc. And Bessent has been very clear, Secretary Bessent of the Treasury, saying we're dealing with the banks. There's no more excuses. We're going after the banks that are funding all of this, and they come out of the city of London. And even, it's coming out in the newspapers out of London, the same exact thing. So we'll keep watching as things keep developing, as Israel keeps hobbling any attempts to Israel. Remember Robert Maxwell, right? Ghislaine Maxwell's father, the triple agent, Russia, UK, Israel, who had the media empire that was, of course, hugely to do with scientific and medical books, that basically was such a huge part of the medical scientific world view on what is acceptable medicine and the takeover that then led to Epstein's massive empire on the biotech takeover and control mechanism leading to biowarfare, etc. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard, in the last 2 weeks before she resigned, and we're going to talk about Bill Pulte as the new interim ODNI or DNI. Basically, she had what she had done was she was looking into over, I think it was 120 U.S. funded biolabs worldwide, right? And 40 of them were in Ukraine. Okay, gain of function research, and that was, she was going after it hard. So this is the mantle, okay, that Gabbard was carrying, huge. Whether it is the MK Ultra stuff, the Epstein stuff, the deep state stuff, just a massive mantle, right? As she's needing to step aside, I believe, for her own safety. And now Bill Pulte is going in there. And so Bill Pulte, William Pulte, he is, of course, has been the director of Federal Housing Finance Agency, as well as the chair of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And he's increased the value there with them. Of course, it's, since 2008, these huge wars and fights over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You had BlackRock, you had Larry Fink wanting to buy them out, make them private, and Trump said no. This is about federal housing money. It is about how we're able to handle real estate in this country to do with federal money, and of course. It has been a huge war around this, and Bill Pulte has done a huge service. He's going to remain in those positions, kind of Rubio-esque style, occupying now. He's now the interim acting DNI. And so very interesting, of course, as his position there in the director at Federal Housing Finance Agency, he went after with Bessent. Scott Bessent went after all of the mortgage fraud, right? And so we had, even Adam Schiff was on the chopping block. We had, of course, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, Lisa Cook out of the Federal Reserve. She was also called up, and of course Eric Swalwell. All of this mortgage fraud by our elected, supposedly, officials. And so Bill Pulte is a brawler, and he's not controlled, and he is somebody who Trump is trusting to hold the line there, right, while we go forward, because this is very dire, situation that we're in with our intelligence community at the moment, and who can be trusted, who can't. And it's said that Gabbard is going to go full bore for these next 28 days and releasing everything that she can as this goes on. And so we're going to keep watching what comes out with Gabbard. Supposedly, huge stuff, everything that she can declassify that will aid in the grand conspiracy cases going on in southern Florida. And that is her role on her way out for her own safety. As she is moving into, of course, her husband's health, but also, I believe, protecting herself for a future time, because I do believe we are moving into a new republic. And, for everybody who's been watching this channel for a long time, we remember that phrase, Israel is last, right? Israel is last. So it's very interesting to watch how that might roll out. And so I might move into, at this point, what's going on with the I'll mention this real quick. At the FIFA World Cup situation, we're now seeing the rollout of facial scanning robots. Okay, it's being reported that in Dallas at the AT&T Stadium, they're having facial scanning patrol robots out and about, and so this is again connected to the fusion centers, connected to just the surveillance of everything, and they're using these huge events, the FIFA, of course, the Olympics coming up, all of it, to have increasing more rollout of these robots and fusion center surveilled events, and so that's happening. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that. I also wanted to mention huge protests all across the UK to do with the murder of, I believe it's Henry, is it Henry Nowak, who was, of course, stabbed to death by a Sikh thug with a history of being violent in the UK, stabbed and bled out with the officers watching on and doing nothing. And we saw that that there's just a massive breakout of huge protests across the UK about his death. And we're also seeing that in Australia, a huge surge in the populism there to fight against the globalist government of Australia. And Australia was hit so hard during the COVID with the austerities, the control, the population control, again, with what has happened with that, Jewish shooting situation that happened last year, I don't know, a few months ago. I can't even remember anymore, but basically their One Nation party is surging. One Nation. In Australia, it's topping the polls now. It has surpassed the Labour Party, just like in the UK, Labour Party tanking hugely, and it is the working class that is making the difference and moving massively to the right to this One Nation party, basically going full bore against globalism. And so that's very fantastic. And so I'm going to move into now the Russia situation and a possible false flag that could be coming, because and then I'll at the end of the video I'll get into President Trump did sign a new executive order today to do with promoting advanced AI innovation and security that does increase the basically interrogating the AI rollouts of advanced models before they're allowed to come forward. And so we will get into that. It is a small win. It's still not the whole thing. But before I do that, I want to talk about this situation of the EU, NATO, FEFE that likely is coming as they need a war. They need a war because they need, as the Belfer Institute there, Belfer Center at Harvard Kennedy School is reporting, as Trump is likely over the next 3 years to diminish more and more the support of the United States for NATO, they need to gin up something now, and they write it all out, what they're going to do, and I'll link that below so you can read it. But the Kiev Independent is saying it too. Zelensky, of course, he's been begging for more surface-to-air missiles from Trump, citing what's coming. But in Russia, they still haven't forgotten that on May 22nd, you had this huge attack by the Ukrainian drones on this girls' school in Luhansk. And you had 21 dead, I think at least 50 more injured, something maybe even more like 60, where they literally, as there was this attack on the school, the girls, they were like 14 to 18 years old, studying to be teachers, ran out of the school, and then the drones chased them back into the school and then hit the school and killed all of these girls. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds so much like another country who does this all the time, and this happens to be an old stomping ground of that same country during the time of the Khazars, right? And we'll talk about that too in a minute, but it is just the same playbook over and over, as we see in Israel, massive citizen outrage about the unwillingness of the IDF, Shin Bet, the investigation unit Laha 433 to release all the footage from October 7th that they've had, and they seized all, of course, the phones and cameras and memory cards of people who were actually there at the rave or the kibbutzim, who had all the footage of the massacres, and it won't be released. It's been deleted, and there's a huge protest going on in Israel as well. So very interesting there. But back to our situation here. So what's being conjured up here is you have what is likely to be Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine going on a three-prong attack on Belarus. And this is basically Belarus does apparently manufacture some of the nuclear components that go into Russia's nuclear grid and weapons grid. And so this is a really huge situation that if the EU is planning to do this against Belarus, that is a Russian ally, and it has this, there's an area, and which I'll get to in a second, that it is, bordering, I think it's about 1,000 kilometers with Ukraine, and that then there's this kind of 70-kilometer area where it's bordering Lithuania and Poland, and what we're hearing from Harvard and Kiev, and Zelensky, directly, is that Russia is going to try to occupy this area, which I'll get into in a moment. And of course, they're going to need some FF to provocate this. That's something they're claiming Russia's going to do it. So likely they will do it, and try to, of course, claim a NATO incursion, Article 5 situation. And because it involves nuclear issues, that their hope, of course, is to have a nuclear response from Putin. And it gets into the Magog. It gets into, of course, the whole thing, the final war. It's going to be Russia. That is the Magog. When you look at it, it's, they're coming down from Russia. They're fighting, of course, the Jews, etc. And it's a world war. And it's also the same playbook that's come out from all of Chatham House et al. Since the last 100 years. And so looking further at this, when we look at what things like the Belfer Center at Harvard are saying, we have, well, first I'll talk about the Kiev Independent. What Kiev Independent is saying is that there's an incitement. This is what Zelensky is claiming through the Kiev Independent newspaper. There's an incitement that's happening here through Belarus, that Putin is attempting to incite, ramp up, to bring Belarus into the war on the side of Russia against Ukraine, right? And this is complete baloney, 100% baloney. We have President Alexander Lukashenko, completely of Belarus, completely saying that's complete bogus, that's not true, that's not happening. And again, as I said, this is 1,000 kilometers of a border with Ukraine. And I mean, Russia has been so staid and so exacting in how it has done this operation to not escalate it into a full annihilation war. Always staying, doing what must be done to prevent the harm of the Russian population in Ukraine and the false flags and the NATO threat. Okay, the Maidan coup, all of it. What's been engineered since Obama's time, not to mention the massive money laundering. The reason that Ukraine was considered the #1 corrupt country in the world before this Maidan coup is because they were, and hence the 40 biolabs, the massive organ trafficking, the tens and tens of Israelis that have been prosecuted and caught with organ trafficking, especially kidneys, out of Ukraine to be sold to rich Israelis, et cetera, and on, okay? And that this formerly, a long time ago, was occupied territory, that Ukraine, you can go back, it's Lenin, it's Trotsky, But go way, 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 way back, and you get back into the Khazars, and people always say, "Oh, Khazars, it's a myth." It's not. No, it's not. I mean, it is an absolute real thing that you did have um, a Khazar empire in Ukraine back in the day, and this was from 650 to 1016 A.D. Okay, and this had to do with the Jewish diaspora, right? That moved up into that area, and so people always contest this, say it's not true, but when you study it enough, you see no, it is true. It's not necessarily the Rodenites, and it's not necessarily different other groups, but it is still true, and it is important to look at it all in historical perspective and these long, never forget wars that continue on and on. And so as we look at this and we see that they're claiming that Russia is attempting to ramp up a war against Ukraine using Belarus, bringing Belarus into the conflict, and it's completely coming out of Zelensky's mouth, who wants more surface-to-air missiles, which Trump is ignoring, and is using Elon Musk's Starlink still. And as you know, if Israel merges with our military, and of course total access to all of our satellites in real time, it's all very interesting. But this place that they're super concerned about is, well, first they're saying that Russia is to use Belarus as a forward operations stage for attacks on then NATO countries afterwards. Okay, it's going to get active in Belarus, it's going to attack Ukraine from there, and then it's going to also attack, it's a forward staging ground to attack the other Baltic countries. This is the plan, and this is what they're ginning up. And the area that they're most talking about is this SUWALKI gap, the SUWALKI gap. And this is a shared border between Poland and Lithuania. Okay, Poland and Lithuania with Belarus, and it's about 70 kilometers where there's this corridor between Belarus and Russia. Okay, and that they're saying that Russia's about to occupy it, and this is a weakness in NATO's eastern flank. And then what they're also saying, a quick sip of water. Sorry for the slurp. What they're also saying then out of the Harvard Kennedy School at the Belfer Center, where they do all kinds of, color revolution scenarios, where they create the scenarios and then they execute them, and it's very interesting to hear Pete Hegseth earlier this year when he said we're not going to be accepting any more military officers that graduated from Harvard or Yale and several other Ivy League schools. We're no longer going to be putting them into positions of power in the U.S. military. Very, very poignant and interesting. And so anyway, they're going to need an FF to move in, but let's just see. So the Belfer Center just the other day, this is the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at Harvard. They're basically saying that Russian threats to NATO's eastern flank, this is the name of the paper, I'll link it below. Russian threats to NATO's eastern flank, scenarios, strategy, and policy for EU security. And then their scenario is that Russia is going to seize the SUWALKI gap, right? That Poland and Lithuania that border upon. And basically their reasoning is that Putin, his core objective is to fracture the NATO alliance. And it's pretty clear to most of us that it has been the U.S. deep state with the bankster Cartel Babylon elite that have fractured that alliance in creating the Maidan coup and creating this trouble with Russia. And of course, it's gone way back to way back. But George H.W. Bush trying to get Putin to agree to a World War III with China, and him refusing early on when he first came on board to be promoted as the leader of Russia. But Putin, then their next point is Putin will execute an incursion into these eastern gray zones and that Trump's reliability as a NATO member will continue to diminish over the next 3 years. Putin will continue to try to draw Eastern EU countries away from NATO. Very interesting, as the new Prime Minister of Hungary is trying to impeach the president of Hungary, right? And what's going on there, kind of the opposite. And as they've stolen the elections in Romania and elsewhere, in Poland, and we're seeing that, of course, these are the areas that are saying will be hit by Putin. Largely Poland and Lithuania now here in the mix, and out of the forward staging ground of Belarus. So it is very, very orchestrated, just right here down in print. I'll link it below. You can read it, you can download it if you want. But basically it says that NATO must conduct operations to have quick reaction forces in place, okay, in Poland, Lithuania, Romania, for something that's about to occur, And so we know there's going to be some FF that are going to need to move in, and that's really what I wanted to cover today, that we're looking at the situation of, as we continue to fight the Hydra, as Trump is chopping off heads of snakes all surrounding us from all sides, and we look at this situation at 250 of just being attacked on every single front, from within and without. We're going to need a new compact of the Americans here, and as we gird our loins with our belt of truth and the armor of God, to fight these demons. But now they want to execute this incursion into a larger war in Europe, and so that's what we're going to be watching as we go forward, because it is a very dodgy and dangerous situation on top of everything already going on, right? Because they don't like that of the City of London. That is, of course, it's all interconnected Cartel Babylon, coming from the same minds of evil, the same demonic minds that are behind all of the globalist bankster elite forces. There's 2,400 billionaires in the world, most of them absolutely demon possessed and involved in trying to destroy the free world for a technocracy takeover. And so as we keep looking at all this, sometime going forward, I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago I talked about the Talil Brahmins and how, I think it was when Vivek Ramaswamy was running for president against Trump, ridiculously, and being a Talil Brahmin, and his sister, Usha Vance, his wife, his wife's mother is the sister of Usha Vance's mother is the sister of Vivek Ramaswamy's wife's mother, and the Talil Brahmin connection with the Abrahamites, and that many of the Talil Brahmins, we look at the H-1B visa fraud and all of the huge push to occupy the world with the Indians as the corporate and merchant class, that I had talked about back then, the situation where Talil Brahmins actually believe they're of Jewish descent. And that's the Brahmin class that rules India, and they live in a class society, right? Caste society, very strict. And that they consider that Brahmin comes from Abrahamites, and that even cow worship comes out of the Jewish tradition. That of course Moses was trying to put an end to, of cow worship and the golden calf, and they celebrate that was a good thing, and all of it gets into the Khazars of Ukraine. All of it, it's a direct line between the Talil Brahmins connected to the Khazars of Ukraine, and how the Brahmins of India, as the priest class, consider themselves the chosen people in the same ways as we see with the culture of Jewish culture. And so it is very interesting to look at who's unified and who is connected with who, and how it's put out there as a elite class. I'm not talking about regular people from everywhere, okay? need to unite against these elite class people who believe they're better than everybody else. It is absolutely, massively important that we do so. And I'll get more into those topics again in the future because I had covered them very heavily in the past, but I'll link below some stuff you can check out. But it is all interactive. It always gets down to secret societies and captured and um, economy of sin and participation in sin groups and how they bind and rule. They bind each other and rule in that fashion, but mostly happily and with no morals. Okay, no morals. They don't have Christian morals. They don't have what did God tell Moses? Destroy the Arab Rev. And Moses said, no, I just, I can't really do that. And, here we are, right? And so, we're basically in this, Arab Rev freaking, Armageddon situation, right? And they're trying to kick off World War III. So it's a thing. It's a pretty big deal. And we need a new compact. I would, even say a new Mayflower compact, as the situation of, as we're coming into this new territory of this hostile frontier of the entire destruction of our country in the West. How do we unite and govern ourselves together? How do we unite as Americans and citizens and humans that are not, insanely demonically possessed? How do we come together to actually come to a new compact that has to do with respect and the golden ruler to fight against this massive evil? Because I believe that's where we're headed, and I believe that we can do it. But it takes so much willpower to fight the machines, the AI, the entrainment of the devices, the sensors in our bodies, and without all of it is so massive. And of course, we know what does it is our respect for our bodies and our temples, and being led by the Holy Spirit, by God, and how to direct ourselves every day, and giving our time to hearing that instead of to hearing multiple videos all the time, because this is where we're at. They're trying to kick off a larger war with Europe and with Russia from Europe, testing what's going to happen with the USA, and finding a way to, of course, go against Trump again. And if we have one thing we need to do this summer before, again, the August recess, which will come from the Senate, is that we have to demand 100%, 202-224-3121, 2321 for Thune in the Senate, that they absolutely must recess in August. If there's any hope as we move forward, it is that Trump can do recess appointments, that he can get them done, that his team is in before the midterms and the massive fight that's coming. And so, as well as our massive fight for the midterms, in whatever way you can get active and involved. It's so important. And so the last thing I'll mention is the executive order on AI that Trump did sign today, called Promoting Advanced AI Innovation and Security. Basically looks like it only targets frontier models, so only the most advanced, creepiest, most dangerous models like Mythos that went rogue and out of Anthropic, where you have the co-founder sitting with the Pope, as the Pope is saying AI bad, but sitting with the co-founder of Anthropic, but writing a book length, thing about it. For the Vatican, but basically it targets frontier models, and basically it talks about that that all critical infrastructure, hospitals, dams, or energy infrastructure, all of this must be protected from these AI frontier models, that they can't come in and just allow these into our critical infrastructure. But how about allowing them into our bedrooms, our devices, our homes, our cell towers, etc., our bodies. That is also not mentioned here. But basically, they're saying in this executive order that it will identify frontier models, the most advanced up and coming, and they will be identified and reviewed and defined by the Secretary of Treasury, Besant, by the Department of War, by the NSA, and the Department of Commerce, that they will be deemed what these models are and how they can be, they will be delayed. And at least a 30 whole days, 1 whole month of review will be happening. But, that's not exactly a long time. So your Googles, your OpenAI, your Anthropics, your XAI they'll get 30 days as they develop their new out of control AIs to be deployed. So very interesting there, as we see as Israel's trying to merge treasonously, attack us, an invasion from within into our military, and be in DARPA, be in IARPA, be in HARPA, be in our most advanced development agencies in intelligence, as if they aren't already and haven't been for the last 50 years, but openly, right? It's like when it's like the snake, shedding its skin right before it like devours, its prey, that, they can't hide anymore, so just full bore out in the open. So there we are, and it's a calm one tonight, but it is, it's a real situation that we're in, where the people in the most power are going for broke to destroy freedom and to suck us like ticks, right? Speaking of, alpha-gal and just the massive biowarfare of the ticks that they could take in hand anytime. If RFK Jr. wanted to do a war on the ticks, he could. And we did have somebody come out say that back since 2021, there's been a 96% cure rate with a acupuncture treatment called SAAT, to do with the Solomon, and very interestingly called Solomon allergy zone, an acupuncture point, but also a whole treatment with acupuncture that brought 96% remission on alpha-gal. So I'll be looking into that and let you know. But people who are allergic to the meat, they're not allergic to the lab-grown meat. I'll be linking this below, but very interesting that hasn't come out, seeing as so many deaths from alpha-gal. And on Fauci's watch in 2021, no mention of this, even though it's on the NIH website from way back when. And so back to the tick from within, right? So, a giant parasite sucking the lifeblood out of the insides of the USA, right, till it just pops out as a giant monster. And of course, that's what we've been dealing with. Trump's cutting off Hydra heads, but it's that stab of the sword, the word, right, to the heart. Okay, it's the heart that needs to be killed. Okay, it's the heart of the takeover that needs to be stopped and killed. And there will always be heads. There'll always be heads until there is a new compact formed. A new compact formed of how are we going to govern all of these, in the face of all of these enemies, the core points. We already have it with the Constitution. It's already there. So it is basically, how do we get to the point? And I would say a lot of it's on us in our local governments, yes, et cetera, but as they, riot and run rampant across the UK in protest today about a man murdered by a Sikh Islamist, just murderer, somebody who hates non-Muslims. What is wrong with the USA? And I know it is from the Harper Rays and the massive, we are the most controlled by the 5G system, with what it's doing to our brain activity and our ability to respond, okay, to crisis and attack. However, okay, if there's going to be defenders of the Constitution, it's going to be us. Okay, we can't constantly, when I look at the ridiculous large platform attacks on Trump as he's beating back the world destruction of the USA, it's laughable and ridiculous. We have to be the ones. We have to be the ones. And so we have to find a way to come together, and we have to find a way to take collective action, because we are a large number, right? We look at those red maps, those redistricting maps, and we see how large a number we are. So, and people are fighting hard. I mean, don't get me wrong, fighting hard locally, fighting hard in the elections, fighting hard. But what about the rest of the people who aren't doing that? And how do we do more in a new understanding that we're the ones we've been waiting for? We are the ones who, in a new republic at 250, are going to re-embrace the Constitution and take back our country by the means that were outlined in it. And so I'll leave it there, kind of rambling now at 45 minutes, but that's how I'm feeling. That's how I'm feeling today, as we're about to kick off some crazy new aspect of a World War III scenario in Europe and try to suck us into it, suck our money out of us. And I thank so much for watching today. If you found something that was useful or new information, please consider supporting the channel below. It is so appreciated. Shoestring over here in the budget. And of course, sent out the caps to the winners of the C60 Evo You Are Free TV giveaway that I do every month, and they were happy to get them. And of course, c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off, 15% off to anybody who supports the channel, with a different link and code sent to you. The olive oil, the capsules, great to put in your pocket, take with you as you travel around through the day, need an extra energy boost. The olive oil holds an incredible amount of ESS60, that is the purest carbon-60 created on the planet, in the best lab in the world, in Houston, Texas. And I've been super into the CMT oil, which only holds about half the amount, but it's in the MCT oil, the MCT oil, that is, of course, is so great because it's antifungal, antimicrobial, and just for me, it's working really well right now. And I love the MCT oil. People say it's great for workouts before and after, and for all kinds of inflammation when you are to do with, working out, or just a busy day, a hard day, a labor-intensive day. Fantastic product. So they sponsor me, and so I support them, and I thank you so much. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. God's armor, right? We're in it. We're moving forward. And it's up to us. So let's act like it is, and every day pray for what your role can be, what your action can be, and then do it, right? Take the next step and do it. You are free. I'll see you tomorrow.